Hello, I'm Sarah Tremlett, founder of Frame to Frame's Your Eyes Follow ekphrastic Poetry Film Prize. It was launched at FOTOGENIA in Mexico City, December 2023, with a bilingual book with poems and synopses and a QR link to the 17 film screening. It's been described as a unique project for transmedia and translation. It takes as its prompt the idea of using artworks to make a poetry film. So now I'm really pleased to introduce 4 of the artists from the project: Janet Lees, Pamela Falkenberg, Jack Cochran, and Muriel Land. And we are all going to discuss how making an ekphrastic poetry film might differ from our ordinary practice. Each of us have taken the same painting, Huapango Torero, by Mexican non-binary artist Ana Segovia, as our prompt. And with the theme confronting bullfighting, machismo, and animal cruelty, it's fascinating to see how we've each interpreted the theme on screen. You will first see the artist's films followed by their responses to 4 questions I asked them on the making process. I think you will find the results quite revealing on ekphrasis and translation in all its forms. Through Muriel's emphasis on dialogue, exquisite craft and research, or Janet's non-collaborative yet highly successful process with personal Mexican influences with her given poem, or Pam and Jack's layered and inspired animated excavation of Anna's paintings and non-binary background as a whole, or my dramatic, absurdist yet psychological interpretation of Man and Bull, we all have something to say on this important painting. And the role of the book itself here seems to act both as a guide for those watching the films and also provides insight for those who want to press pause and really take in the poems either in parallel, whether in English or Spanish, or on their own. As Janet Lees remarks, unfortunately, so often the poem passes you by in poetry films. Here the viewer can stop and replay and read at will, capture the verbal and visual nuances, either together or as standalone creative experiences. And some of the poems are visual poems as well. So it's interesting to see how a poem can journey from the page to the screen. Finally, I would like to add that the other talented artists in this collection will be giving their interviews throughout the year, so look out for those. And in the meantime, I'd just like to say thank you very much and enjoy the film.
medir esta distancia entre la alambrada y la pared de piedra que alberga todo el delirio rojo de la primavera, entre el alba y el hambre y quien tiene la ventaja. Y es justo y puede ser que una cosa pequeña, como una pistola o una navaja, pueda acabar con un hombre que es un toro, o con una mujer coronada por la fiesta de despedida de la libertad de expresión. Tengo solo esta rosa en un puño y en el otro una sábana pálida, no de redención, sino la enagua rascada del vestido blanco de boda de Lorca. Fue suficiente como para vaciarme la mente, suficiente para entrar en este campo como entro en un cielo lleno de ventanas de dormitorio. Una, testigo del silencio del observador, una soy yo de niña y otra, la cara del toro. No se las ve, pero hay mujeres cantando a través de la caña de azúcar, el sorgo, los aguacates y el agave azul. Su canción me lleva hasta el anochecer, para saber, como la noche, vuelvo a empezar, entrando en estas identidades mientras trepo por las ventanas. Atravieso cada umbral de quien soy para poner a prueba este temple animal proscrito de nuestra juventud. Porque quiero saber quién eres bajo esta luna medio pálida, en el costado de la carretera de la hora y de sus campos interminables, que ahora reclamo como propios.
My approach to this process was different, I think, in that my film was primarily based on the poem by Lois P. Jones and Elena K. Byrne, which is called Self-Portrait with a Line from Lorca, which in turn was inspired by Anna Segovia's painting. Of course, I was very familiar with the painting, and it was in my mind too, as well as the story behind it, how the painting was a reworking of another painting. So it was a homage to bullfighting turned on its head, a call to move away from cruelty and machismo. So there was a real multi-layered thing going on in the ekphrastic process, which I found exciting and at times really challenging. Sometimes there was just so much in my head with all the different references. I felt I was going a little bit crazy. So in the end, I focused my ekphrastic response really firmly on the poem. It's been interesting to hear from Lois and Elena about their process in making the poem. They said, one of the aspects of collaborative writing for a film poem was about balancing the lyric aspects with the narrative, which was established by Anna Segovia of Swapango Terrero and Janet Lees's artistic visions. As an aside, this was some collaboration. Two poets writing a poem together in response to the work of a painter, to be turned into a video poem by a poetry filmmaker and voiced by yet another artist. And of course there was all the different layers of the different art forms working together, so there was that collaboration going on.
I didn't speak with Lois and Elena before making the film. Ekphrasis is art responding to art rather than artists co-creating. But I do work with other poets, and I do wonder how different the film might have been if this had been a straightforward collaboration. It's an interesting thought. Getting back to Lois and Elena's process, they said, it was important to take into consideration the history of the toreador, its symbolism in the painting, and the feminine talk that empowered the scene. We are both lovers of Lorca, so his line was the perfect fulcrum from which to build the poem around. And the line they are referring to is, how is it that something as small as a pistol or a knife could do away with a man who is like a bull? And this comes from Lorca's tragedy, Blood Wedding. They go on. Knowing that our words would need to translate into film, we didn't want to dilute the message with abstract tangents. Language became body as sight became insight, and vice versa. When I came to make the film, I was looking for ways, as I always do really, to show it rather than simply tell it with the footage. And with the music as well, actually. So I was looking for lateral rather than literal connections between the footage and the poem. And also the music as well. I wanted it to be complementary, but not straightforward illustration. I didn't just want to create a straightforward illustration of the poem, but to try and take it somewhere else, bringing in some of the layers of its provenance. I also wanted to bring something of myself to the work and my experience of Mexico. I'd been in Mexico City in the winter of 2022 to attend Festival FOTOGENIA and explore the city. And it was a transformational experience for me. One of the most memorable times of my life. It was life-changing, actually. It's always daunting when you share a film with the poets, in this case poets, whose poem it's based on. And especially in this case, as there was no discussion of the poem and the potential film between us beforehand, and especially in this case because I was very aware of the weight of the reputation and work of these two exceptional poets. So it was a relief, to say the least, that Elena and Lois were happy with the film. Quoting Lois and Elena again here, Janet's insightful filmmaking allowed both words and imagery to move as one seamless creation. She worked with multiple elements of the poem and painting, while underscoring the passionate, sensual and powerful role of the feminine in transformation. And this was actually a central consideration for me. They go on to say, leading with the trail of the toreadors, the filmmaker brings the piece immediately into focus. The footage's back and forth motion, overlapping actions and images also invite viewers to reflect on the cyclical nature of gender and cultural conventions. The continuous loop mesmerizes, and I love this. They say, one could say in the same way a bullfighter's red cape motions would. Or as the dancer did in this beautiful film, ready to captivate, to explode on the screen. Janet brings her own imaginative power and joy into the shared reflection of the inherent feminine endurance that outlives any attempts to subdue or undermine its power. And I fully concur with them both when they say here, what a memorable opportunity Sarah Tremlett, Ana Segovia's Huapango Torero, and Janet Lees have provided us. This ignited dialogue between three art forms. I love that idea of ignited dialogue. It's already set the creative cogs going in my mind. In the introduction to the book, Sarah Tremlett mentions translation and how this brings another layer to the ekphrastic process. She talks about how Spanish can provide a musicality and tender inflection that the English voice often doesn't demonstrate, and I do agree. I chose to have a Spanish narrator for the film, with the poem appearing in English text on screen, partly for this reason, the musicality, passion and tenderness in Monica's voice. Monica is actually an artist who I met by chance in Mexico City on the same day I filmed the footage. We had the most delightful conversation, very inspiring and creative, and we've kept in touch ever since. So it felt absolutely right to me that she should narrate the poem. This multimedia book, which is fully bilingual, is extremely impressive and I imagine unique. Multimedia and immersive experiences are where we are now, so it's definitely a book for now. I always think that poetry film has very, very immersive qualities because it does have that capacity to take the viewer somewhere else and provide an emotive, immersive experience. For me, one of the frustrations of listening to poetry or watching video poems is how quickly the poem goes past your ears and eyes. So it's a joy to have the poems here in print with stills from the films and links to the films, prefaced by that thoughtful introduction from Sarah. To be able to switch between the book and the films is a rich experience, and not least to have the opportunity to rewatch the films after reading more about the filmmaker's intentions and process, and to be able to pause the films in order to savour the poems on the page. This is something I really enjoy doing, and I always appreciate it. I always appreciate the opportunity to have, for instance, in Zoom meetings, to have the poem there on the screen. And I particularly found this with the winning film, the beautiful film by Muriel Leland, because that's a very extensive poem. There's a lot going on in that film, beautifully layered. So it was great to be able to pause that and keep coming back to the poem on the page. And for me personally, as a multidisciplinary artist working with text, images and film, this book is about as perfect a combination as they come. I'm also learning Spanish very slowly and painfully, so it's a great opportunity to practice reading in that language too when I actually have an idea of what's being said.
Calle en silencio, la luna cuelga, cuelga ya lejos. Él quiere torear un toro, su vida pone por precio. Un capote en la noche, a la luz de la luna quiere torear. Los toros en los corrales andan inquietos. Asesino, ojalá y te lleve el diablo. Toro asesino, ojalá y te lleve el diablo.
Our film is an amalgam of Ana Segovia's painting and Ana Beltran's song, both entitled Wapengo Torero, inspired by and combined with Bruno Enciso's poem La Faena, and then overlaid with a poem I wrote, also entitled Wapengo Torero.
Multiply ekphrastic, multiply intertextual. I wrote the original synopsis, which began by calling our film a fiesta of intertexts, and described Jack's poem as haunted by intertexts. Our film ends in a celebration in a virtual art gallery inhabited by Ana Segovia's paintings, Day of the Dead, folk art marionettes, and cross-dressing paper dolls, demonstrating that social constructs are not unmalleable truths, but instead subject to deconstruction and reconstruction that can change reality.
When I first saw Anna's painting, and the original it was based on, and found out that the title, Wapengo Torero, was also a song made famous by Ana Beltran, I immediately wanted to combine the two. Then I became aware of Bruno's poem, which speaks to both. I thought it would be really interesting to make a film where all these elements illuminated and reflected one another.
I encouraged Jack to incorporate as many intertextual references as possible, along with the cultural context, which is not unitary. The cruel spectacle of the bullfight, still allowed in 8 countries, the lingering culture of machismo, the ongoing battles for gender equality, and the difficulty in understanding non-binary realities, which are complex and at least in part rooted in biology.
It's always enlightening to interrogate and interact with other works of art, to see where it leads. We did something similar with a Haibun poem by Ellen Pete and the paintings of Henri Rousseau. It opens one's eyes to different worlds and worldviews.
Poetry filmmaking might itself be described as inherently ekphrastic, at least when the film is based on a pre-existing poem, and as long as ekphrasis is not narrowly defined as the use of detailed description of a work of visual art as a literary device, and is understood more generally as works of art inspired by other works of art. When understood more broadly, ekphrastic work is closely related to intertextuality, the idea that all texts, and by extension all artworks, are a tissue of quotations, fluid, with many levels of meaning. This understanding of writing and art in general fundamentally accepts that there is an ongoing dialogue, reworking, reframing, reevaluating, an inevitable dialectic process of deconstruction and reconstruction which acknowledges both history and the potential to change the future by reinterpreting or reframing the past. Changing perspectives can change reality, sometimes in the blink of an eye, when we suddenly pass a threshold and see something in a new way.
What did I discover? I discovered the ekphrastic process was fun. You get to see new worlds, new art, many different ways. It's really good.
Don't throw out the crazy ideas too easily. Give them space first. The critical function is more useful in the later stages. Jack says that this is a Jack answer, and I need to say more. Our strategy was to skew the initial ekphrastic prompts, the Ana Segovia painting, augmented by some of her other paintings, along with the Ana Beltran song and Bruno Enciso's poem La Faena, even as they inspired Jack's new poem, which then inspired our film, but not exactly in any straightforward way. For instance, the lines, "the cloth, white, announces intentions of truce," only happens in the space of a virtual art gallery showing 3 of Ana Segovia's paintings, and the line of the poem, "The bulls are restless," is depicted as a crowd of macho patrons drinking in a Mexico City happy hour watering hole, while in the background, Ana Segovia's painting hangs over the bar, surrounded by TV screens broadcasting bullfights in progress. And the line, "He wants to know the other side of the fence," is shown as a shadow cast on the image of an actual Latina women's demonstration against war, capitalism, machismo, transphobia, and racism.
The art of ekphrasis is a worthy topic for a book. It's, as Sarah says, a celebration of ekphrasis and the film poem. I like seeing the individual poems and confronting them away from their filmic context, then going back and seeing how they interact with the films.
So many firsts. Gotta love that. What I like most is that it's not cohesive, and there's no escaping that. It is a common heuristic strategy to imagine that we all, more or less, think alike. But we don't, and that's an adaptive advantage, giving us multiple problem-solving ideas in the face of danger, which makes us more resilient. Real consensus is achieved despite diverse opinions and ways of thinking. Artistic endeavor is a good model of this, and ekphrastic art in particular is a sandbox where magic happens and art begets new art.
The painter is whispering softly, I see you, we see you. Under stars, no longer tested, weighed and terrorized. With nothing to prove, you rest. There is no suit of lights to costume brutality, nothing disguised. The painter sees your scars, but dreams a violet horizon. I see you. We see you. Before this, there was dance and song, an indigo sky and a wishful child, small footsteps shuffling about the corral, hidden, blooded, certain that this slow taunting made boy man. I see you. We see you. Ghost yellow roses outline grief and loss, marking the Day of the Dead. Petals fall. We bred you wild, made you fierce and relentless, a perfect killing machine. We marveled at your ruthlessness. But the painter will have none of this tainted love, none of these old lies. No bulls will be ridden to their death, not left drunk and drowned, lanced in the ring, or sliced in street fights. We are remaking the dance, one careful step and another. I see you, we see you. Spiked wire slices the landscape. The painter makes space to pass between the razor lines, a narrow birthing channel, an ellipse. I see you. We see you. The painter unfolds white linen, begging pardon, promising peace, then offers a rose, 2 small gifts, and a finger prick of blood. We will no longer do the things our fathers learned to do. No more blunt sentiment. It is the movement the animal notices first, and then the musky sweetness of the scarlet flower. It was never the colour. We know this. That was the first lie. No bull sees magenta, carmine, ruby, or crimson. Repelled and fascinated by otherness, a death wish choreography took hold. The next lie was the artistry. There is nothing tribal or pagan here, no pretty metaphor for sex, life and death, but a carelessness toward living and a show of pointless courage. This violence was never ancestral language. It was theft. Looking on, Taurus, the bull's head, star-studded and sky-high. Head down, focused, never ignoring old wounds. We are making things new. The painter says, the bull is my life. A shower of petals stirs the air. Bewitched, hoof and hand move closer, never quite touching. Delicate shoots rise from the earth.
A Love Spell Cast in Petals tells a small story of what might happen when we dare to think differently, when we challenge cruel stereotypes and remake old understandings, both of bulls and of men. Anna's painting hooked me from first sight. The quiet, gentle gesture of offering a flower to a fighting bull was deceptively simple and unnervingly complex. I wanted to understand it, both in its Mexican context and in a wider sense too. It seemed to me to be a kind of incantation. The painting and the history of the painting were the first steps in a journey that included a 1950s popular song and the 1936 children's book, The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf. This remarkable book was banned for its pacifist agenda in Spain, burned by Adolf Hitler, but praised by Gandhi. A Love Spell Cast in Petals draws on this long and layered history and is a wee bit of a palimpsest. I've given lots of thought to what made this project so very different for me. And at heart I think it comes down to one word. That word's dialogue. Either literally words spoken with collaborators, or in the imagination. My work often emerges from improvisations on location that are then developed solo in studio. Here instead I began with research, lots of research, then writing the text, before storyboarding the script and devising sound with my team. But perhaps the most exciting and difficult thing about this project was that Anna was very much present in the painting. My own journey then became an imaginary conversation with Anna, a dialogue with Anna's Mexico, in particular how binary understandings of gender are shifting and the campaign against bullfighting, resulting in its possibly only temporary ban in Mexico City in 2022. There was so much inspiration here, but also a real fear that I might misunderstand the painting or the painter. It was kind of paralysing and energising by turns. The big discovery for me has been to be brave, to deep dive into new working methods and to explore wider collaborations. I've also learned a great deal about the practical challenges for writing for translation. For example, my poem in English has a deliberate gender ambiguity around the notion of the painter that was simply not possible to reproduce in Spanish. My translator, Camila Bosso, was endlessly patient and supportive in helping me to find a route through, but undoubtedly, the text in Spanish is a very different journey for the viewer. So this experience is something that will definitely inform future writing for translation. I'm super excited that the Frame to Frames book is soon to be released into the wild. A multimedia publication in Spanish and English is such a respectful and democratic way to bring the poetry films and the art that inspired them to a wider audience. It gives readers and viewers time to explore the details and interactions. Speaking of those films that take Anna's paintings as a start point, they've been created by original, compelling and diverse makers that I really admire from across the globe. The book will help us to share understandings and learn from each other's approaches, and it will open up our work to forge connections with others. We need these opportunities to build dialogue, to build community. Just as Anna's painting opens conversations about human and animal rights, about tradition, about gender beyond binaries, the book will provide a platform for important but all too often silenced voices to explore these important themes.
Criatura magnífica, fuerte y orgullosa. El toro se yergue y con su ojo aterciopelado, vigilante, observa su fértil dominio, el cielo estrellado, su constelación, signo de su corona terrenal. Con infinita inteligencia nos muestra en otra parte y lleno de agitación el lejano ruedo de otro. Mientras está cercado tras el burladero de su mundo cómodo y seguro. Pero el hombre, con su oscura envidia, debe agraviar hasta que al fin, enfurecido, el toro se convierte a la condición propia del hombre. Evocando con su victimización toda gloria pasada. Solo sus gestos, sus ojos aturdidos y sin cielo, su comprensión debilitada, que reconocemos en todos nuestros esquemas perfectos, en llamas, doblando a la muerte de otro, en el espejo desempañado de nuestro propio último aliento.
My film Bull began with the concept of a performer who's also a bull, the relationship between man and animal, and somehow reflecting the bull's condition. So I wanted to create an empathy with the majestic animal's barbaric experience without directly showing it. I settled on the idea of a narrative where we watch a mime artist parodying man in his folly, and so that we associate man and bull as being trapped in a similar mortal condition. I've recently worked quite a bit with dramatic narratives, and in this case, one of my daughters is a performance artist, and she's the man bull, and the other is the assistant director and filmmaker. All the moves in the film were repeated through freezing them and editing them to move alongside to sort of shadow the actions of the man bull, and because some of her moves were very similar to those of a bull or a bullfighter, and I thought that they added an extra pathos. In terms of the poem, I've become very interested in working with the Italian sonnet form, which I've done before, because I like the change of mood midway. And in this film, we begin with man and his complacency and absurdity, which then becomes turned on its head by the arrival of a fly. And of course, there are parallels to the bull and the bullfighter in this as well. And the music, which I was so lucky to find, was by a Spanish theatrical music group, who in fact do perform in costume on stage. And I use one of their tracks for the first part, for the absurdist part of the film, and then a completely different track for the ominous and tragic ending. I was also very fortunate in that I had a Spanish voiceover artist who is wonderful, and the inflection she gave to the language, to the sense of the absurd, was exquisite, really, and I don't think the film would have been the same without her. So for me, this wasn't really so much of a new experience, being a painter and having based my some films on paintings before, such as Villanelle for Elizabeth, Not Ophelia, from Millet's painting. Yes, I think that, but I do think that having a painting as a prompt is a really interesting idea, and it can help you to send your practice in completely new ways. As someone mentioned to me, they wouldn't have made their film without this painting as a prompt. And I really like that idea. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. I'd just like to say thank you very, very much to everyone who took part, and I hope you're all inspired to make your own ekphrastic poetry films. And of course, if you are interested in the subject, please do buy the book, which is available from Liberated Words. Thank you very much.